Hello and welcome to this month's ALLi Insights. And we're very global indeed this February because I am sitting in a hotel room in San Francisco and I am talking to three ALLi members who are in India. Are you all in the same place? I'm not even sure. I'm
No.
going to ask, no, okay, there we go. And India being what it is, you're probably miles away from each other. So I have Mukti Jain here, Rasana Atreya, and Ritesh Kala, and they are going to, first of all, tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do, and then we are going to have a conversation about something that I know is of great interest to all of you out there, which is self-publishing in India and how indie authors can reach this amazing market of fantastic readers, and maybe talk a little bit also about Indian writing and in English and how it gets out into the world. And well, look, I don't have so much to talk about, but let's hear from the good people. Mukti, can we talk to you first? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi Orna, hi everyone. As Orna mentioned, my name is Mukti, and I, along with my partner Ritesh, started this company called Read Out Loud. And the basic idea was to get international independent authors into India, and that's what we do. We distribute and market their books. I am a student of literature. I've done my master's in Sanskrit and done a master's degree in creative writing. And over to Ritesh.
Wonderful. Um,
Hi Orna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very well. I'm in lovely San Francisco, so I'm great.
Just a little bit about myself. Till about a year ago, I was working in investment banking. Did that for about 10 years, got bored with it, and decided to start Read Out Loud, which is actually related to something I really love, books. And as Mukti already mentioned, we started the company to bring international authors to India. And it's been a year since we started, and we have come a little way forward, but we're looking to move ahead quite a bit.
Good for you. What a great thing to decide to do. And Rasana Atreya, who needs no introduction probably to lots of you who are watching. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those who may not know you, Rasana.
Hi, Orna. Thank you so much for having me here. My journey is a little strange in that my novel was shortlisted for the TV Jones South Asia Award, and I did have a publishing contract, and but I declined it. And people told me I was crazy, but I just wanted to see what would happen. I was like, okay, so if I fail, I can always write another book. And so, then I wrote about what I did for a major newspaper in India, and it sort of took off like that. And when Amazon came to India, they invited me for the launch, and sort of from there. What I find myself doing is sort of being, talking about self-publishing and a lot of scams that happen. So anyway, that's in brief, and we'll talk more about that. But
It's wonderful. I love that story. I can't hear it often enough because it was such a brave thing to do. And it's funny how these impulses and intuitions, if we follow them, that they can often lead us on to great things. And I know you are doing very great things there in India, not just for yourself, but for indie authors all over. So let's just begin there then. Rasana, could you just give us a sort of an overview of the market in India as you would see it today? Because I know this is a fast changing thing anyway.
Well, I would like to give you a few bullet points, just to give you an idea of what I think is happening in India. And according to the India Book Market Report by Nielsen, India ranks second in the in English language publishing, which is after the US, but it is larger than the UK market, if you can believe that. Since we learned English from you guys, that's interesting, I think. And if you add translated works to the bag, India isn't a market you can afford to ignore. And another interesting thing that has happened, and this is completely independent, that has happened recently is that Amazon has acquired a 26% stake in a publisher distributor called Westland, and there's also indications that CreateSpace is coming to India in the second half of this year. So which makes Amazon's stake in Westland all the more significant because the group that owns Westland also owns the landmark chain of bookstores. There's 100 or odd stores in India now, so I think that's very significant. And another very significant thing is that 900 million people in India have mobile phones, and at least 42% of that number have transacted through their mobile payment gateway at least once in order to purchase digital content. I think part of the reason we've not seen as many ebook sales in India on Amazon is that they have been depending on credit cards, which is typically what happens in the rest of the world. But in India, only about 2% of India uses credit cards, and through banking gateways, that is online banking, maybe 5% do. But so this is where carrier billing comes in, wherein you have you use your mobile phones and you use that to pay. So it's really micro payments, and I think that's where the future lies, and a lot of people are experimenting with it. So
That's very interesting. Do you have Apple Pay in India?
Apple Pay, no, not that I know of. Ritesh might know better. I don't know.
No, we don't. We don't.
Okay. It's so interesting, all of this, because, we think about our book.
Yeah, I think you have your headphones are not working.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay. I think they're working. Right. Sorry, did you ask me something?
Sorry, technology is letting us down a little. Yeah, and what I was saying there was, as authors, we think about our books and getting it written, getting it published, getting an editor, getting a designer, getting the formatting right, getting it out there. We don't think about the kinds of very interesting things that you were talking about there, Rasana, which, if they're not in place, actually, the rest of it is going nowhere. And so could I ask you all, each actually, to comment on the one thing you think will make the biggest difference for indie authors, in terms of, is there anything we can do to overcome some of the challenges that Rasana has raised?
I think, unlike the West, where ebook sales are enough for an author to survive on a writing career, in India it is of utmost importance to have a physical book in physical stores. India as a country believes in things that are tangible. So even though there is content which is in an ebook form, we are not willing to pay for it simply because it's not tangible, and we kind of also believe that why do we need to pay for it if I can find it online for free? So the biggest thing that indie authors need to do is get printed books in India. And while we're talking about printed books, what happens is usually we put these books on all online platforms, Flipkart and Amazon, and smaller gateways like Snapdeal and Paytm. Unfortunately, the most important thing about book sales in India is that discoverability of books happens only in bookstores. So until and unless your books are plastered across the crosswords and the landmarks of this country, you will not really see as much sales, because that is where the people start discovering the books. So I think the most important thing is to have a physical paperback in the country.
And obviously with CreateSpace coming, that will help that, in the sense that you'll have POD, but will the economics of that work out?
Go ahead.
Orna, hi. Yeah. So I'll just explain the economics to you, and this is something which, just to give you a quick background, Ingram has tied up with an Indian printer to bring international POD books to India. So they will start printing locally in India very soon. what we have seen is that even with a local printer printing tie-up, generally the cost of printing books in India, unless you're doing anything over 100 copies, is something which where the economics does not really work. Uh, I'll give you a quick number over here. What we have is we work with the same printer. And if we do POD, the cost of printing a 300-page book is about 250 rupees.
No.
If we print about 100 copies, the cost comes down to about 110. And if we do offset printing where we print 1,000 copies, the cost comes down to 65. So there is a massive difference in printing cost when one does POD versus when one does when one does digital or offset.
Yeah, and I think that's the experience everywhere. Perhaps it's a little bit more pronounced there, but of course, if you do a run of 1,000 books, you've got 1,000 books, and the cost of storage perhaps, and you've had to pay up front, and a lot of indies prefer POD for that reason.
And to add to what Ritesh said, I think all the big sellers in India like Chetan Bhagat, especially Chetan Bhagat, who's really India's biggest seller, his books are priced to move. So it's almost like use and throw. You can read them and throw them. They're like 99 rupees. So it's like under $2. He is making his money on volume. That's what it is. I mean, obviously, all of us cannot expect to do that, but the thing is, you need to really price your book for the Indian market. You cannot convert dollars into rupees and expect the book to sell.
So what price should an indie author set your average? I know all books are different, and apples and oranges and pears and so on, but say your average text-based novel, your average text-based non-fiction book of about 70,000 words, what sort of pricing should we be looking at in India for that?
So I'll make this fairly simple. We can share the chart which we have over here later in the group, but I'll keep this fairly simple. If it's in the romance or chick lit genre, these are books where the prices are relatively very low. So they're priced at about 150 to 200 rupees. So considering that, anything where the printing cost is more than about 35-40 rupees, those books are not really saleable, so to say. Which is where printing cost comes into play. For all other books, for the big five, it is generally seen that they price their books about 50 to 100 rupees higher than the Indian publishers. But my personal recommendation is that independent authors would come.
I think we lost Ritesh.
Everybody seems to get chucked out of this hangout for every 10 minutes. You only get 10 minutes in and then you have to go for a little break. But I think he made the point very well. Do you want to pick up there, Mukti?
Yes. Basically, the idea is simple that if it's a chick lit or a romance, you need to price it anything between 150 to 200 rupees. But if it's an international author...
Sorry, could you convert when you're talking roughly, just for people who are not familiar?
Yes, it's $2.3 to $3.
Okay.
It's, around $2.3 to $3. If you're looking by romance or chick lit by international authors, you can go a little higher. You can go from 4.6 to about $6. But if you're looking at any other book, whether it's YA or mythology or literary fiction, you need to price those books at around 250 to 350 rupees, which is approximately, again, 3.8 to $5.4. Usually what happens is the big five publishers, they price their books higher, as Ritesh was mentioning. But the reason these books also sell is because they bring only the biggest authors into India. So these authors already have a following, they already have a cult, they have the Dan Browns and the Jeffrey Archers, and even if you're selling a Jeffrey Archer or a Dan Brown or even a John Green, these books fly off the shelf. Which is why our recommendation is usually that indie authors, if they're trying to come to India and they have a book around 300 pages, they should place it somewhere between 300 to 400 rupees, which is about $4.6 to $6.2, somewhere in between.
Which is low for a print book. So how much, I mean, presumably we're talking here then printing in India in order to sell in India. And I think that is what your company actually provides. That's a service that you provide.
So I'll just give you a comparison over here, quick one. Any Create Space or Engram book which is printed outside India sells for about 900 rupees to about 1200 rupees, which is about 3 to 4 times of the price at which books are supposed to sell in India. So, yes, so which basically brings us to the point that books need to be printed in India for them to sell in India, and that is of utmost importance. Again, what happens is the big problem with POD, as I was mentioning earlier, is that if you do print on demand, your book will be priced about 50 to 70% higher than what is acceptable in the market.
Yeah. So
Orna, are you around?
I'm back. I'm back. So it's a challenge. We're talking about something that I must say, as I'm thinking about it and talking to you here, seems to be challenging. So obviously Amazon coming into the market and hopefully growing the digital market is one thing that we need to think about and hopefully look forward to. And I presume there are other, and when I say digital, I don't mean POD, I mean ebooks. Presumably there are other ebook players coming into the market, and I know that represents a very small percentage of the market now. But for most indies, print is not a model that works very well in terms of a return. I mean, there's nothing unique in India. That's not unique to India. That's pretty typical everywhere. And that the POD actually is priced out. It's the same here in the UK. It's very, very difficult to get your POD figures to match in a way that you can be sold in the shops at the same price as the big five publishers. So
may I make a comment over here? So we did realize that this was an issue, and which is why, as a company, what we do is we do not do a print run of 1,000 at the very start. We usually select the books we take on so that we know if whether a book would do well in India or not, depending on the sensibilities and the reading habits. If we do believe that a book does well, we suggest that an author does a small print run of about 100 books, which would mean at 110 rupees, it will not be more than 10,000 rupees, which means that with a very
About
small investment,
$200.
yeah. What that means that with a very small investment, we can actually test the book in the Indian market. How we do that is with 100 books, we send a few books to bloggers and reviewers to gauge their reactions to the book and how well they're taking the book. A few are kept and put on sale on Amazon and Flipkart and other sales platforms. And a few of them are then sent out to distributors and sub-distributors and bookstores. Now what happens is when we do these three-pronged exercise, we get an assumption of how many books the market could consume. Our distributors, sub-distributors also send us a query back saying that, okay, we would like to infuse X number of books into the market, and we think there could be a demand of X number of books. What happens is that even if we are doing a print run of 1,000 books, we are sure that about 70 to 80% of it can be infused into the market at the very least. This obviously this does not definitely confirm sales, but it definitely confirms one thing, that your books will be out in the market and they will be out for display for greater discoverability and visibility.
So you're taking the sorts of decisions that a trade publisher has taken in the past. But tell me a little bit about how the financial model works, because presumably you're not operating as a trade publisher, you're not putting the investment in up front. The author is required to make the investment?
Yes. What we do, Orna, is that we book distributors and book marketers as a company. So yes, the author does need to make the initial investment. But what we've seen is that if the book does well, the later print runs are something which can be financed based from the returns of the book.
Sure, but the author makes the upfront investment, and that's in terms of paying for the print run, presumably. Are there other costs?
Ideally,
No.
what will need to happen is that besides the print run, the author will obviously need to market the books. That is something which, even though they're available, people do need to be made aware of the book. This is more so the case for a new author bringing in their first book into India. Once they're fairly established, the marketing can come down as well.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Ritesh? There's an awful lot of noise on behind you.
Yes, what I'm saying is that the first time the print run is being done, that is when the investment is required. After that, the what can happen is that the second print run, if it is so required, can then be done from the profits of the book. So the author does not
Sure.
really need to invest again.
No, I accept that, but I also, most books don't make that second print run, so we need to kind of get a picture of what happens up front.
Um,
So,
All right,
I'll
so
just break it
here's
down
the
to you in very simple
breakdown.
terms. Orna, Ritesh,
Yeah. Well, or not.
I can't see
Uh,
Orna.
I
I
think
think it's
he's.
just two of us.
Yeah, just continue, Mukti.
Okay, so the simple breakdown is this, that if you have a book, let's assume for ease of calculation it is for 100 rupees. Uh, you sell the book to the distributor at a discount of 67%. In India, it's anywhere between 60 to 67%. What
wow.
means is that you keep about 33 rupees is for you, and the distributor then takes the book at 67 rupees. He will then sell it across to his sub distributors or bookstores at the further discounts. So in a ideal scenario, if you've sold out 1,000 books and each book is for 100 rupees, you make the 33 rupees and that is all your money. And you're not paying anything extra for the books to be distributed or do anything apart from that.
Okay, so the upfront costs of publication plus 67% for distribution. It's not easy to make that pan out financially, I would say.
But assuming that your printing cost is less than 25 rupees in that scenario, even if you sell about 60 to 70%, you break even.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not taking in the costs of actually making the book, the editorial and the design
Yes.
and all that goes in
Yes.
before that, yeah.
No, this is the cost of printing alone.
Yes, I get it. Okay, that's great, and thank you for explaining all of that. So, can we talk then a little bit about ebooks? And I know it's a tiny proportion of the market, but can you talk to me a little bit about what's happening there with ebooks in India?
Could I
Uh,
go on that? Orna?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, there are a few different players coming in, and I mean there are already there's a couple, and there's another new one that has also just come in. And so let me do my favorite thing and give you a few stats. One of them is Daily Hunt, and just to give you an idea of what is involved, Daily Hunt has an installed base of 110 million readers. They tell me, and 30% of whom, and this is a mobile app, okay, and 30% of these people, these readers consume English language content. So there's a lot of scope, and if you can get your books translated, you have access to a larger market. And as of now, they don't really work with the third party aggregators, so you can email them directly and they will help you set things up, and you can go with that. And they've come up with another interesting idea now. Daily Hunt does mobile carrier billing. So you can serialize your book and sell chapter by chapter or one short story at a time. So they call this sachet marketing. And I'm told that they tried this out first with some a Marathi language writer. It's an Indian language, and his sales rose by 48%. So he says, my contact at Daily Hunt says that they really recommend that people do that. And obviously, I mean, no, you couldn't do that with literary fiction. I get that. It has to be a page turner. But, this is something to keep in mind. And as of now, payment is in Indian rupees and US dollars and British pounds. And they do their rates are a little low as compared to Amazon, and there's a reason for this. So they do about 20 or 25% royalties for independent authors and 35 to 40% for publishers and author collectives. And this is because mobile carrier billing is expensive, because they have to pay taxes and they actually have to pay the mobile carrier. So that is a cost that you have to live with. And Daily Hunt, another thing that I wanted to mention was Daily Hunt will, upon request, provide you referrals to translators. And the other thing that is coming up, and now this is a trade publisher, but I find it interesting because their model is so different.
Okay,
so,
just before we get there, you've given us so much fantastic information there. Can I just slow you down for 1 second? Can you tell listeners where they can actually find? Is it Daily Hand? Can you spell it out for us?
It's DAILYHUNT.in. Right. So you can email them at self-publishing@dailyhunt.in, and they will get back to you.
Fantastic. That's brilliant, Rasana. So tell us then about this exciting trade publisher.
So I know I didn't expect to be saying that, but just to...
Wonderful.
It's just to give you an idea of what's happening in India. There is a new trade publisher called Juggernaut, and it is headed by Chiki Sarkar, and she is the former publisher of Penguin Random House India. And she's raised about $250,000 in the first round of funding. So and she has high-profile investors backing her. It's a mobile app now. I'm sorry?
$3 million.
For the second round, yeah?
No, the first round was $3 million.
15 crores. 15 crores doesn't it? Anyway, so 15 crores.
Lots of dosh, lots of money.
Lots of money, right?
Yeah.
So a Juggernaut is also a mobile app, and Chiki Sarkar is calling it phone publishing. So what they are going to be focusing on is really short stories. So for shorter retention spans is what I'm told. So on a long commute or a wait at a doctor's office. And they're betting that this is the future. And they've been talking about commissioning short, compelling stories for mobile reading. And the advantage of this is that this is really targeted marketing. So, if you sell chapter by chapter, or you sell, one single, you know who to market the next book to. So I think it's an interesting way of doing things. So, and there's also a third player, and Roxanne, and Ritesh has more information on that. I didn't want to. He was going to talk about it. Roxanne,
can you talk to us about that, Mukti?
Yes, actually, unfortunately, Roxanne was one of the bigger players, but when we checked with them today again, they have shut all their operations for fiction and non-fiction books, and now all they are going to be doing is competitive exams and the likes. So they're not venturing into fiction or non-fiction books anymore. Ritesh, about Roxanne?
Yeah, so basically I had a discussion with them very recently, about 2 days back, and they've clearly stated that they're moving out of fiction and non-fiction books completely. They were being supplied by one of these aggregators till now, but my belief is that over the next few days they will sever ties over there and they will remove all of those books which have come in already.
So what are they doing? What is there if you're not doing fiction or non-fiction?
Doing two things mainly.
Academic.
One is we're looking at academic publishing,
Ah,
so anything related to education, and the second is related to competitive exams in India, which is a huge thing for aged between 15 to about 20.
okay. So not terribly relevant for indies anymore then.
No.
Yes.
One thing I'd love you to talk about, Ritesh and Mukti, is when you take on an author. I know that you took on Lakshmi. Her surname escapes me now, but
Hariharan.
that's her, who lives here in London, or sorry, there in London, because I'm not there right now, but is of Indian extraction or second generation British or whatever. And she, had a great sort of outing in India. So can you just talk to me a little bit about what you were able to do for her that she couldn't possibly have done for herself?
So,
Okay. You go. Why don't you go?
all right. So the Lakshmi was a fairly interesting one because we've been friends since much before we started talking about business. So there is a relationship there because of which it was much easier to work with her. What we did was we did a print run for her in India, and we distributed her books to some of the biggest bookstores in the country, across the country. What we also did was we helped her with marketing of the book. So everything from getting display space at India's biggest chain store, which is Crossword, to getting her into schools and colleges where she could speak with her target audience, which was she writes YA fiction, right? So she could go and speak with her target audience directly. It's been a year since the book is out, and it is still selling in bookstores currently.
Great. Good stuff. So, could I ask you then, before we finish, to give me your prediction about what the market in India will look like for indie authors in 5 years' time? Mukti.
Personally, I believe that if an indie author wants to come into India, then they will have to do the due diligence. Until and unless an author does not go all out, it won't really matter. So for every international author trying to come to India, it is required for them to do everything from blog tours to reviews to getting there on Facebook and Twitter and reaching out to every reader at a time. With that, obviously, like we said, it is impossible for authors to come to India and do in promotions like Indian authors, but it is important that they still reach out by webinars or any other form, by expert panels, because until unless that happens, it will become a little difficult for any author to sell in India.
Okay. Ritesh, your prediction for 5 years' time.
So this is an interesting question for me. The one thing which I want to talk about now is that currently Amazon's recommendation engine and algorithm does not really work in India because the sales of ebooks are so low. Uh, I'll give an example over here. We're working for an author who's selling about 10 ebooks a day, and she regularly lands in the top 100 ebooks on Amazon currently. What I see in 5 years' time is that a lot of the things which are right now very common in the US in terms of discoverability, that is something which will become better in India as well as the market develops. Other than that, the other big push which I see is that other players other than Amazon will become big because I personally think that they are doing great things. The third thing I see is that I see a possibility that Amazon could, you know, expand their Amazon crossing imprint to include Indian languages because I consider translations to be really important.
Fantastic. And Rasana, your thoughts?
I agree with Ritesh on translations. I think that's going to be really big. Even though we write about India, we write in English. A lot of us write in English, and we are reaching only a fraction of the Indian market. So even for myself, I'm considering translations, and I'm actually getting a database of gathering a database of high quality translators. And if I have the time, maybe I'll just set it up so more people can use it, because I really believe that's the way to go. And I'm also excited about what things like what Daily Hunt and Juggernaut are doing, and that's why I talked about them. I think mobile publishing and mobile books are the way to go. Phone publishing, as Juggernaut calls it, and so e-singles and chapters at a time. That's going to be big in India. That's my take on it. Hello? It is. Okay, I'm back.
I think Orna is back.
Sorry, another little breakdown there. Yes, the mobile phone thing is terribly interesting, of course. And I mean, at the moment, am I right in saying about 1% of books sold are ebooks? Is that right?
Yes,
Go ahead.
that is industry accepted norms. But as is the case with the international markets, the real picture is something which no one really knows.
Sure. But it looks like in India, like in lots of places, the whole e-reading device bit is going to be skipped, and people are going to move straight into reading books on their phones. And when they do, as Rasana says, they tend to want shorter content. It's fine if it's linked, but at a sitting they don't want to read the big long form book. I mean, people still do, but more people, and particularly these new readers that we're pulling in through mobile phones. So would you hazard a guess as to what proportion of the Indian book market will be ebooks in 5 years' time? We'll come back in 5 years and check. See if we're right.
Actually, I wanted to add to what you were just saying, that Amazon got into India with the Kindle, and for the last couple of years they've been doing heavy promotions. They've got all the top Indian authors to promote for it, with television ads and being at every literature festival and giving heavy discounts. But unfortunately, unlike the West, Indians have not really taken too kindly to the Kindle. And no matter how hard they are trying, people are just not buying it.
Do you know why?
Again, people, I think, get just shifting directly from a book to the mobile phone. A lot of my friends I know don't want to spend 10 to 12,000 rupees on a reading device where they can buy a phone which will let them read a device. And with the new iPhones and the bigger screens, it's almost just like the same thing. So
yeah, we're hearing this again and again outside of US, UK, and it's really interesting as to why that is. There seems to be resistance in the US and UK to reading on phones in a way that there just isn't outside. So we're kind of seeing, as usual, when we're kind of US-centric, UK-centric, Euro-centric, we're seeing the rest of the world as the anomaly, but actually we're the anomaly with our readers. Everybody else is just doing what seems perfectly sensible and reading on their phones. Okay, well, I'm conscious that we're kind of running out of time. Was there anything else that you particularly wanted to raise?
Mukti, do you want to speak about the film thing which we are trying to do?
Yes, Orna, I think we wanted to talk about a little bit about how Bollywood is now taking up new stories from authors and books from across the globe, and which we found really interesting, because we met with a couple of production houses and distributors and producers, and all of them were on the lookout for new stories. And what they do feel that maybe if they ventured out of India, they might get their hands on fresh content, which is where this is what we also are trying to do at Read Out Loud. We wanted to see if we could get indie authors to give their books to us so that we could pitch it to Indian producers and production houses. And if they like the story, they could either option the book or buy the rights for the book for the Indian territory, and maybe develop it into a full-fledged feature film.
Very interesting. Of course, we've just completed the book about how authors sell publishing rights, and this is happening in Hollywood too, as well as Bollywood. Big interest in working with self-published writers, largely because it's so much simpler around rights. If, once a book has been trade published, there's a contract in place which can make the rights thing complex. But indie authors own all their rights and therefore can just deal directly. Having said that, of course, film contracts are notoriously complex and need to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb and a good lawyer. But it's really, really interesting because these film companies are completely hungry for content, and particularly hungry for a particular type of content that, in fact, lots of indie authors are producing. So I think that's a very exciting wing to your business, and I'd be very interested to hear how that goes. It's right at the fledgling stage, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, we've just initiated discussions with a couple of producers. We have confirmation from them that they are looking for particular type of books. We could actually share across the type of books they're looking for, and also we would be able to work for these books, and maybe we could take it ahead from there.
We lost you there, Ritesh. Mukti, could you tell us what particular types of books the producers are looking for?
Okay. One, there is this great demand for action movies. Anything like Transporter or Die Hard or even Taken, or any superhero movie, the Avengers, Iron Man. All of these books are like, there's a crazy demand for those in India. Apart from them, there are a few demands for horror movies as well. Not as much though, but psychological horror or supernatural horrors. When you're looking at a particular kind of book, I can think of as a Stephen King kind of a book, or if you're looking for a example for a movie, it could be Conjuring. But again, horror is not that great in India. We don't take very nicely to anything that is gory.
Good for you.
Unlike the West, yes. But I think there's still a very great demand for white collar crimes. Wall Street or Wolf of Wall Street, or even Enemy of the State, conspiracy theory. Books like these have a great demand in India. Apart from that, you can take those very feel-good movies. You have Little Miss Sunshine or One Fine Day. Stories like Juno. It's a different story. Or in fact, even Silver Linings Playbook. Movies like those, they kind of do well as well over here.
Interesting.
And I think children's books, children's movies, Harry Potter or Narnia, they do wonderfully well. Like, we have our own superheroes for kids over here, but I think we're running short of them. So we're looking
too many superheroes.
Yeah, we need to import a few of them.
I
we need our own version of Harry Potter.
Very good. Sorry, I'm cutting across you there. I noticed you didn't mention romance, and I mean, when I think of Bollywood, I think when everybody thinks of Bollywood, we think of musical romance. Romance is not big.
No, it is. It's very big, but we get most of our romance from India. What they're really looking for is romance, because the kind of romance that the West produces, the sensibilities are very different. That don't really go well in India.
Okay.
So we're still fighting with the upper caste girl and the lower caste boy.
Okay, good. Interesting. It's so interesting, and the cultural differences are the most interesting of all, I think. Okay, well, look, thank you very much, all three of you, for your time and for coming along to tell us a little bit more about this very interesting and exciting world. I will be back. I noticed you didn't give me your predictions for ebooks in 5 years' time, but we will come back in 5 years' time and have a look and see where we are. I'm sure we'll all still be here, all going well, beating the drum for indie authors, and I'm quite sure that the one thing that will have happened is that we will have seen a lot of change. So thank you again, and we will follow up this session. My pleasure. And we'll follow up this session with a PDF download, which will go into detail on some of the facts and figures and things that we discussed here today, because there was a lot to take in, and also the technology kind of slipped a little bit here and there, so people may not have fully got everything that they need. So yeah, until we talk again, thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.